About this time yesterday, President Trump addressed the crisis that has enveloped our nation from the Rose Garden before walking across the street to the St. John's Church. It's located across the street from the White House. This is what he had to say.
All Americans were rightly sickened and revolted by the brutal death of George Floyd. My administration is fully committed that for George and his family, justice will be served. He will not have died in vain. But we cannot allow the righteous cries and peaceful protesters to be drowned out by an angry mob. The biggest victims of the rioting are peace-loving citizens in our poorest communities. And as their president, I will fight to keep them safe. I will fight to protect you. I am your president of law and order and an ally of all peaceful protesters.
Joining me now to talk more about this, Bishop Vincent Mathews Jr., International Missions President for Kojic, the largest African American Pentecostal denomination. He's also pastor of Tabernacle Church in New Haven. Well, I think I got that wrong. He's joining us now. Pastor Vincent, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Tony. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much.
I don't know why I was thinking Mississippi. I apologize for that.
Yes.
Is it?
You're correct.
Oh, okay. My notes said somebody. I had Connecticut. I apologize. Well, good. You're a neighbor.
Yeah, no problem.
You're a neighbor there in Mississippi.
We're right at Memphis.
Well, let me ask you this, because the president addressed this in his comments. I wrote a piece that was published today about this, where I think the lawlessness that is being displayed in our streets is the same lawlessness that led to the death of George Floyd. It's a rejection of truth and the law, and that puts our entire nation at risk.
I agree with that. I think that, first of all, the indefensible, reprehensible events of the killing of George Floyd is just appalling all around the world, and it is rooted in sin. And those who seek to peacefully protest, we had pastors who peacefully protest, and then anarchists came out of nowhere smashing and doing all types of things. It is also rooted in sin, as well as a rejection of truth. I agree with you on that. We have a huge problem, not only in America, but around the world, but more specifically right here in the United States.
So, Bishop, what is the way forward? I mean, we seem to find ourselves back at this same position time and time again.
Yeah, you're right. And I think the reason that we're back at this same position is, for many people, is incomprehensible, the depth of man's inhumanity to man that we're witnessing. And thanks to smartphones, it's being recorded, unfortunately. I think the problem is that for many, it's no surprise. It's a hurtful thing, but it's no surprise. And we need to, as a church, not black church, white church, no, as God's church, recognize, just as John the Baptist did at the opening of the New Testament, at the last Old Testament prophet, not only preaching the kingdom, but preaching truth to power and shifting those who are in systems. He talked to the tax collectors and the soldiers and told them that justice must be important. And I think that's important for all Christians, to speak out for those who are disenfranchised and who have challenges in our society.
I mean, these issues are real. Clearly, there are those that want to exploit them and take advantage of them, but that cannot lead us to ignore the underlying issues that we have yet to address as a nation. And I want to bring it back to what you just said. I think the church has to be at the tip of the spear and addressing it, because the only thing I believe that can bring people together in a genuine, abiding fashion, I'm not talking about a tolerance. We got to go beyond tolerance. We have to go to what's called love. And that happens, I believe, the only true way that can happen is when we're in the bond of Christ.
My brother, Tony, you are absolutely hitting the nail on the head. The love of Christ binds us through koinonia, a fellowship with one another. And that koinonia means that we have something in common. It's not our skin color. That's superficial. It's not our ethnicity. It is the love of Christ that binds us together. And when that love is shared with others. They will know that we're his disciples by our love for one another, how we love others. The love of Christ, the agape love that we share with others will impact our society, and we look beyond the demonic designations given through what we have learned. I read your article, and over not only the past 50 years, what has been taught going all the way back to social Darwinism, separating races and things of that sort have come to conclusion right here, what we see happening in our society.
Yeah, this didn't happen overnight. It was.
Yes, sir.
It's been decades, century in the making. I agree with you. I think it does go back to the to the teaching of Darwin and the survival of the fittest, and that we are all here just by chance, not by the hand of a creative God who loves us and sent his son to redeem us. That changes the whole dynamic of a society. How do we get back to where we need to be?
Well, we need to really seek and share with the world the true gospel, and that's why I mentioned John the Baptist, the gospel that John preached, the gospel that Jesus preached, the gospel when Jesus in Matthew 9 looked at Jerusalem and saw the people as sheep without a shepherd. When we see that there are disenfranchised, marginalized individuals in our society, not to just say, hey, these people must pull themselves up by the bootstrap, but to say that Jesus is the answer, that he can strengthen you. He is the one who empowers you, and we share that gospel and go and let them know that the theocratic rule of God, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and that they can be free, whether you're black, white, Latino, Asian, or First Nation. We must share the gospel.
Bishop Mathews, I spend my time, looking at the survey data, looking at, polling. It's a part of what I do in terms of not how we make decisions, but it's just trying to figure out where people are. And what I see time and time again, just like what's happening on this conversation here today, you and I, because of our relationship with Jesus Christ, I would venture, and I was thinking about this as I was preparing for this interview with you, I bet we agree on probably 90 to 95%, maybe more, of the issues that we deal with.
That's right.
But you wouldn't know that by how the media would describe white evangelicals and black evangelicals.
Yeah, and that's why we must not allow the narrative to be defined by the world. The world cannot define the narrative because we have, of course, really, there's 7.5 billion people in the world, 7,500 languages in the world, but there are only two cultures in this world. There's a culture of Christ and a culture of Satan. And you're right. We may not share the same DNA, but we share the same Father. And we share the same values, and those are biblical values, and we must not be informed and influenced by the systems or the doctrines of demons, if you will allow me to say that. No, that's the truth. But we must find that bond together, regardless of what the differences that the world say, and move forward and glorify God. We must. You're absolutely right.
And I know from the data that is a fact, that black evangelicals, white evangelicals agree on almost everything. Yes. They stand out because they have a biblically centric view of the world. Now, the problem, I think, the challenge is, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the media is intentionally trying to keep those two groups separate.
Well, the media is keeping us separate, but then also I think we must be intentional about breaking those barriers, just as I'm on your show with you now. We must be intentional, not just swapping pulpits, but really seeking to see what we can do on the ground in our cities and in the areas where we are to serve humanity and demonstrate. Remember that scripture. They will know that we're disciples by our love for one another. Yeah. As we demonstrate that love, the same love that was cross-cultural on the day of Pentecost, those who sent out Paul and Barnabas in Antioch, when we see that it transcends, when the world sees that you and I can not only get along but work together and break down the walls of denomination and ethnicity, then we defy what is being portrayed in the media and outside.
And I think that is essential to the preservation of this republic. Without it, I don't think our nation has a future. I mean, I think we can patch it together. We can keep limping along. And I'm not saying that everybody in America has got to be a believer and is going to be a believer, but what I'm saying is that if the church will model it, as you just said, it can bring the healing and the way forward for a nation.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. And as we do that, I mean, we will be able to help others to be free and to enjoy the peace of God, which passes all understanding, in spite of the differences. You think of Tony, and you know better than I. You look at somewhere like Somalia, where they're fighting and have been in anarchy for a long time. All of those people are related. They're the same ethnicity, different clans. We will always find a difference. We will always find something that divides us. It is the bond of Christ that will unite us in spite of whatever outside differences that we may have.
It is way past time that message becomes a consistent message of the church, not just from the pulpits, but in practice from the pews in every place that we live. Bishop, as always, great to have you on the program. Thank you for coming on the program. Thank you for declaring truth to the nation.
Thank you, Tony, for demonstrating that love. And as we work together prayerfully, our conversation has blessed someone. It's an honor, as always, to be with you. Thank you so much.
Well, I look forward to literally linking arms with you moving forward on behalf of America.